given government, whichever level, whether it's the center, whether it's the state, whether it's city, right, local government, can play a reasonably enabling role, in an important one for startups. I think it starts with ease of business, it starts with infrastructure, it starts with creating a conducive environment to be able to raise funds in. It may start with a catalytic element as well, which is the government can inject some funds in very early stage where others may not be willing to tread for various reasons and factors. It might even result in the government providing inputs on areas of interest for them. Government can provide even opportunities to be a customer for startups, a platform on which they can pilot. So government can play an important role. But I think we should also be tempered in our expectations of government. Government is like a very, very large corporation and it also operates in the public good, and so needs to be very transparent in its operations, and that sometimes that need for transparency sometimes slows it down because the process is set up such that you need to put everything out to bid, you need to take into account every bid. The process needs to protect the public's money, right, in some sense at the highest level, that being the first goal, and that sometimes creates some bottlenecks, right, sometimes. So I think startups should engage with the government, seek their assistance, leverage all the infrastructure they provide. I think look to actively engage, and investors particularly should look to actively engage with the government to find opportunities that they can invest in, that they can co-invest with the government in, that they can co-build a business in or an industry sector in. All of those are opportunities. I think government alone can't do it. I think what the government can do is maybe sometimes write a check, maybe sometimes clear the path, maybe sometimes give some a green signal to go enter a new area that may have regulatory hurdles. Those are the kinds of things government can do, but the actual pushing has to be done by entrepreneurs, investors, other stakeholders, right? I think government can only do so much, and I think but it can be a very important catalytic element. So the Internet of Things Center of Excellence was set up at the NASSCOM warehouse in Diamond District in Bangalore. It's the first of its kind that is a combination of DAITI, the central government, the Karnataka government, NASSCOM and industry bodies, right, of various kinds, and corporate supporters. So what our goal there is really to help nurture and scale up Internet of Things startups and ventures. And it could be even larger ventures that are now venturing into IoT. It could be small companies that are building IoT for the first time. Here's a high level perspective that the new world we live in is all about delivering experiences, and many of those experiences are going to be a combination of software, it's going to be a combination of hardware, it's going to be a combination of data analytics, it's going to be a combination of intelligence, software, AI, machine learning, whatever you call it. It'll be also maybe a combination of value added services that are all of this combined will deliver an experience, and we are going to be buying those experiences. Often those experiences need a piece of hardware to enable them. There's going to be elements in the environment that are pieces of hardware, that are sensors, that are streaming data to you, that are sensing various interactions, all of that, right? We all know that, and we understand that. Given the huge future IoT has, there's a responsibility for us to ensure that our startups have the best technology, access to mentors, access to manufacturers, access to expertise of various kinds in the design, from the design phase all the way to even post-production, post-sale support, right? And so what we're trying to do is bring together best practices from large companies, from vendors across the ecosystem in a way that is accessible for startups. We're trying to provide them with labs, equipment that is either very expensive or very hard to get access to. At the lab, we're trying to provide workshops, expertise, trainings. We're trying to provide peer-to-peer learning. We're trying to provide even business potentially, right? And obviously, everything that we do involves also some access to investors, right? That can provide capital. So I think the COE is a very important step because India has not had a tradition of deep hardware expertise and success, especially in consumer. The kinds of consumer electronics that is needed for the new world of IoT. It's extremely small form factor, extremely well built, has extremely low manufacturing costs. It has to be designed for cost in mind. It has to be extremely resilient, right? And at the same time bleeding edge, because the bar is very high. I mean, if you're wearing a Fitbit band, you're not going to compromise. You're going to expect the best in the world, and you're probably going to expect it for in the future for less than 1,000 rupees. And it's but if an Indian company is trying to build a Fitbit equivalent, they have to compete with the best there. And in order to compete with the best, you have to have all that knowledge, you have to have all that infrastructure, right? And that's where we're trying to accelerate, to make sure our companies can compete, our innovators can really deliver the goods that will be lasting and sustainable. Yeah, I think Let's Ignite is obviously an annual event for you all at Let's Venture. Let me talk about Let's Venture, which is actually the bigger thing. I think Let's Ignite is an amazing event. I come to it every year, glad to participate. It's a gathering of your customers, quote unquote, your community, your stakeholders, your investors, and all of that, right? And others that you may still need to evangelize, that you invite to ensure they understand that what momentum you're building, right? But I think much more important is Let's Venture. I think it fills a very important space in our ecosystem, early stage, more systematized, aggregation of investors interested with the right filters applied, the right accelerators and process, the ability to really match make efficiently, bring credibility, bring proper regulatory processes and governance processes. I think that's and finally accelerate speed to market time, right? Kind of time to funding. Right. Try and make that efficient for the startups. I think money is the fuel that fuels startups in one sense. Idea being the other and effort being the third. I think finally you need money in one of two ways. You need it for your customer, you need it for your investor. Right. I think Let's Ignite and Let's Venture provide that early stage investor money access to it, right, in an efficient way for startups. Startup founders have nothing to lose but their time. The hunt for money is very painful for most young entrepreneurs. And if anybody can provide an accelerated way of doing that efficiently for entrepreneurs, that's hugely beneficial. And I think that's where Let's Venture has a huge role to play. That is, I think very game changing. And I think the opportunity is limitless. I mean, there's, in my mind, there's space for probably 5 Let's Ventures equivalents in India, or Let's Venture can grow 5 times. So, that's where I see this, going. I think there's going to be more and more innovative ways in which companies will get funded. More and more people will jump into the funding pool. More and more entrepreneurs are jumping in. So we need more matchmaking that's efficient, right, and done well.